The BagFather is back, and today he's flying solo. With Jen Samba off on a top secret assignment, we are not asking any question. The spotlights shift to a special guest who's bringing serious energy to the runway. Joining us is Gus Naughton of Alaska / Hawaiian Airlines. He's a force of innovation, creativity, and a forward-thinking ideas that are helping reshape what air travel and baggage in particular can be. Known for his infectious enthusiasm and boundary-pushing mindset, Gus isn't along for the ride. He's helping chart the course. From reimagining passengers' experience, deal with fraud in baggage, claims, to drive bold new initiatives. He's the kind of person who doesn't just follow trends, he creates them. So buckle up. The BagFathers is in the captain's seat today, and with Gus Naughton on board, we are cleared for a conversation that's anything but ordinary. So hopefully he's not going to sing, but a warm welcome to Gus Naughton.
Thank you so much, Marlon. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for your time, y'all.
And I would like to start, make a quick introduction for the people who don't know you.
My name is Gus Naughton. I'm a principal software engineer at Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines. I've been here for about 7 years, and my role has been all over the business, really. I started in lounge and loyalty programs. I've worked in flight distribution and selling for a little while, but the back half of my career here at Alaska and Hawaiian has been about innovation. And a large part of that has definitely been within the baggage space. So I'm super excited to dig into that with you today.
Yeah, you and I, for the listeners, it's good to know that we have a little background together. I've visited the site. We have some vision shared on especially fraudulent baggage claim. So we will come back to that later. Your background is in engineering, right?
That's correct. I did a little bit of work in the air traffic control space and the engine manufacturing spaces in aviation before coming to Alaska Hawaiian, but by trade, I'm a software engineer.
And tell me, because you're also representing a different generation that has a digital mindset on itself. And of course, you're talking to me, so for me, AI first. Yeah, talk to me about you driving some digital transformation within the airlines you were representing.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, when I came into the airline 7 years ago, it was still, at least for us, we were still coming out of our more analog age, right? And so we were building new digital systems to replace paper and pencil processes. And there was a lot of work to be done over the years to kind of grow beyond that and ultimately set us up for what we're doing now with Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines. But, what's happening now with AI is really transformative. I mean, personally, all of my code that I'm submitting in my day-to-day job, almost all of it is generated by AI, and I'm supervising and I'm architecting on the side. But, even when it comes to proof of concepts and measuring success, I mean, we can throw massive quantities of data about baggage at an AI model, and it can spot trends and patterns that we wouldn't have otherwise seen manually. And so it's been really enlightening to use these tools as a way to improve our operation. But then also improve how we're individually performing in our jobs day to day at Alaska and Hawaiian. So, yeah, I think we're definitely in the investment stage of AI. Like, there aren't too many off-the-shelf products that are 100% there and 100% mature yet, but they're getting there really, really quickly. And I think it's on all of us to really experiment with those technologies, incubate them, and get them to where they need to be.
Yeah, sure. You're already saying in between the lines, you have a sort of agentic AI production farm at your house. How do I need to see that?
Yeah, so I definitely have some local servers in my apartment to experiment with. But of course, for the airline grade work, we're partners with Microsoft Azure, and we use their AI offerings for our purposes over there. But again, over the last year and a half, we've been learning how to use these tools. It's been incredible. And I think especially when it comes to, you were hinting at it earlier, baggage claims and some of the more manual processes that we do with on the back end of our operation, there's a lot of opportunity to improve our data quality, to improve our business processes, and ultimately to reduce costs where we don't need to be paying out.
Let's talk through that a little bit, because I had the opportunity to visit the Alaska Center for basically reclaiming baggage, or the central baggage station of Alaska. That's a quite intensive process over there. Tell me, how are you doing that with AI, and how do you improve it? That was an incredible team you had over there.
Yeah, they're really, really effective. We actually have one of the highest match rates for lost items, lost on board items in the industry. And a large part of that is because of AI. So, we have lost items coming from all over our system. Like if you're in Orlando and you lose a pair of glasses, they get sent back to Seattle on the next flight to our central warehouse. And so when we collect all these items from our entire network, traditionally what happened is the agents would write a free text description of what that item looked like, the color of it, the nature of it, any kind of writing on it, any kind of names or phone numbers attributed to it. And that was the information that we had to match what our guests would submit. We call them found reports, or sorry, lost reports come from the passenger, and on-hand reports come from us. But ultimately, it's up to the guest and the employee to write as clear of a free text description of that item as possible. And then what previously used to happen is we used to try to match them visually and search for them. But now we have AI models that take all of the found reports that we generate and the lost reports that the guest generates, and the match rate is in the upper 70s. It's really incredible for just items that were left behind on an airplane. So, we've been able to grow our operation. Of course, we brought on all the Hawaiian Airlines flow as well, and our process has scaled really, really well thanks to those technologies. It's been really great.
What I like about Alaska and my engagement with you guys is that you try to solve an actual problem that you find in a day-to-day basis, and take that problem and find a solution for it. You and I had discussions about software that was immediately being pushed out through an third party to return it as quickly as we can. Can you talk about a little bit about that process, because it was built within chaos, but it was super useful.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the irregular operations functionality that you're talking about, Marlon?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so Alaska, we're a very resilient and on-time operation. We consistently have the highest Department of Transportation completion rates. But sometimes irregular ops really does happen, and you see it on the news. Seattle area gets a massive snowstorm, the whole city shuts down for a couple days. That affects us. Seattle is our biggest hub, and there's not enough de-icing space at that airport for us to continue with the full volume of flights that we have. So I would say once every year and a half, 2 years, we do find ourselves with a large sum of baggage that we don't have planes to fly them on. And at that point, that's where we leverage local couriers and FedEx and UPS. Again, this is an extreme exception case, but we want to get all of our guests their baggage back to them as quickly as we can, back to where they're currently at. So effectively, we had a snowstorm 4 years ago that brought thousands of check bags into our warehouse 2 days before Christmas. And we didn't have planes flying at the time. It was a Saturday, and Sunday there's no FedEx or UPS pickups, and of course on Christmas there's no FedEx or UPS pickups. So there was a mad rush to get these things out, so that way at least they could be home within a 5-day mark. But ultimately, what that looked like back then was calling every passenger and asking them where they want us to ship their bag on these third-party carriers, and if they missed our call, they'd have to join a long contact center line. So it was really unfeasible for when our operation has serious meltdowns. So that kind of was the genesis of this project that we ended up calling Return to Sender. Return to Sender is an app that gets installed on the employee's cell phones, and it allows the employee to scan the paper bag tag, and it connects to a Bluetooth printer, and it just prints out a FedEx or UPS label. It turns a 25-minute per bag process down to less than 30 seconds per bag, including putting the label on the suitcase itself. So since then, we've been able to refine it. Marlon, it's really funny because you build software and traditionally you can test it, right? But in
Yeah.
this case, we only have one of these meltdowns every 2 years or so. So you write this code and you think you got the process right, and then 2 years of time goes by, and that's when it is needed again. And you have to remember how all these things work, and you have to get all the rust off of your memory of this. But we've used it twice in the last year for smaller activations. No major meltdowns, thankfully, in the last 12 months. But for the smaller activations, we're able to get through 500 bags with 3 people in less than 4 hours. It's amazing, and it
Yeah.
adds a level of resiliency to what is already one of the most space constrained airports in the country. So yeah, and we're really, like, to your point, Marlon, about willing to do anything. Like, I'm fully trained on how to drive a 42-foot semi-trailer in case FedEx or UPS misses that last pickup. I have actually driven 500 bags on the airport, docked to FedEx's sortation bays,
Yeah.
and just start unloading because sometimes that's what we got to do. But yeah, it was a great project.
I love it because it's such a good example how good innovation starts with, hey, listen, I'm with my legs in the mud. I need to solve a problem. And if you can reduce something from a 35 minutes process to, let's say, 30 seconds, all those baggage agents has freed up a lot of their time,
Yes.
which is basically unparalleled. I have seen it. I've seen many baggage central of many airlines across the globe, and I always tell about this project. And sometimes, yeah, they just don't see it. And other times, they say, no, we have built something similar, but still it cost them 10 minutes. So, no,
I got my
no,
opera
no,
voice ready. No, I'm just kidding.
nah, the BagFather is not about. I did make my own song, but it's not about karaoke. This podcast, but you should listen to it. Have you heard it already? Baggage is
I don't
sexy.
think I have. Oh, I
Oh,
have heard it. Yeah.
it's on Spotify. Jen and I did an amazing job with that. So for the listeners who didn't hear it yet, I think, Gus, it's right to say, baggage is sexy, right?
Listen, once you and I are in the room, it absolutely is.
A quick question. So the culture of innovation. How Alaska is positioning itself as a tech-forward airline focused on efficiency and customer experience. How does that basically unravels in day-to-day in the day-to-day world?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, as we've been growing to do these long haul international flights out of Seattle, that changes almost on a day-to-day basis too. So, internally we have an innovation practice, and our role is to really connect deeply with executives and other departments to figure out what their pain points
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
where
they
their
are really
opportunities
involved,
lie.
eh? Yeah, they're
Yes,
really involved.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're constantly getting, emails from our stakeholders that, say like, "Hey, have you heard of this?" Or like, "Hey, like I'm having this problem," or "Hey, I think this problem's going to come up in 6 months. Let's address it." And then it's on us to kind of go into the industry and find startups that can help with those solutions, or prove out a specific technical concept, or even do it in house, right? Like there's definitely like return to sender, some incubators that we perform fully in house and keep that intellectual property local. But ultimately, what we try to do is about 4 to 5 different proof of concepts per year. And a lot of those fall within the baggage space. A lot of those fall in the guest experience space. There's definitely a lot more work that our innovation practice is going to be doing this year with our customer app for sure. But ultimately, we do have some pretty high end goals. Like there's some performance goals there about becoming a better baggage performer in our industry. There's goals there around, how much foot traffic do we get through our airport lobbies without getting a single inch more, but, increasing our flight volumes, right? And you look at these things, you do a ton of shadows. I mean, when it comes to the ramp optimization work that my team was doing last year, I was going out to the airport for the 3:30 a.m. shift at least once a week for 6 months, because you can't just rely on paper reports and email anecdotes, right? Like you have to be there as a user, not just as a user during the time that it's convenient for you, but you need to feel the fatigue of waking up that early and then working a double shift, because that's what your users are going to do. And that's what we did, for 6 months until we got it all right. And we were able to scale the whole platform up, and we were able to take feedback in. And, it's still a very iterative process. It wasn't some sort of perfect big bang approach where after I decided I was done, everything was, golden and roses. Like there was still a lot of learning to do once we scaled it out to 45 concurrent runners. But it's so important to be there. And, one thing I'll say for our listeners is I have been a fully remote employee of Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines for over 6.5 years. There's no excuse to hide behind a computer and not go to the airport and see your customers. Your customers are not just your passengers. Your customers are equally your employees. And so you have to be there to support them and do what it takes there.
That's the only way to understand it, because the winning is really really small details. It's fascinating
Precisely.
that you pointing it out, and sometimes I have to talk to people who are only approaching it in theory, which I really
Yeah,
dislike because
me
they
too.
do not understand what it's all about. And again, I've seen your team in your back at Central. They gave me such incredible insights on their process, on the deals, the daily deals that they need to do, and very
Yeah.
simple problems which are heavily time consuming. And you basically address those. Hey, and one other thing I have to ask. We have spoken to Jasper Kork
Yeah.
from BagTech, and obviously the EBTs are also embraced by Alaska Airlines, and
Very much
that's
so.
going, yeah, that's going really, really well. Talk me through it, because I've spoken to also to Lufthansa, who's in season 2 of this podcast. I find it fascinating. I have the feeling that the EBTs are finally getting the traction it deserves.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you, Marlon. So, electronic bag tag was actually a project that we started incubating back in 2015 at Alaska. It was a long time ago, and I think we had something like 200 of these tags out in a beta form. They weren't durable enough, didn't work out, so we kind of shelved the project. But come 2021, I was introduced to Jasper from Bag Tag, and he sent me a sample of the BagTag Flex. So if you're not familiar, it's a rugged e-ink screen that doesn't have a battery, and it uses your phone's wireless power to power it up and change what's on the screen. It's kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch that you can't shake clean, right? So, we tested that out in our system. It worked. We got a larger quantity of those devices. We did a bulk volume test. I remember there were 2 different trips where I had to fly 11 flights consecutively with 20 checked bags that would be claimed at every stop, just to simulate the damage and forces to make sure that it would be durable enough. And it was, and it totally worked out. So, we've got nearly 15,000 electronic bag tags in the system.
Wow,
And
15,000.
our guests, they love them. They're using them over and over again. We're seeing an increasing average number of flights per month that's being sold on these. We haven't done really any marketing pushes on it in a year, and we're completely selling out in our web shop of all these devices. So, that was from a time where the business case was really about getting the guest through the lobby in 5 minutes or less. And we found at the time that, 55% of all of our passengers have already checked in, already paid for a bag. They just need to wait at a kiosk to get that paper bag tag.
Exactly.
And is that a lot of people use this for sports equipment baggage, because at a lot of airport lobbies, where you go to print your bag tag is actually sometimes quite far from where the oversized drop off is. And so that has kind of emerged as a convenience factor for those kind of guests, quite seasonally too, if I may add.
Yeah, a very, very functional and practical approach to
Yes.
why you should use one. Yeah, I got one from Bag ID, and I actually think that it is an interesting partnership that they have. Obviously,
Yeah,
fully embraced by Alaska, and that's actually how
yeah,
it should be. Yeah, Hell,
I totally
an
agree.
air, yeah, an airline partner that is working together, collaboration. That's what it's all about. Because we spoke a little bit about fraudulent back claims.
Yes.
I've been a keynote speaker on one of the events hosted by Alaska Airlines.
Yeah.
Since then, it was a good event, fantastic. But I speak to everyone individually, and every time I need to repeat, no, we need to collaborate on this thing. We need to
Yeah.
collaborate on this thing. Eh? Let's talk a little bit about it, Gus,
Yeah.
because it's a problem that I'm seeing with many airlines. Why was Alaska hosting an event like that, and why isn't the problem solved properly yet? Because it's still here and hanging. And
Yeah.
I love that you took responsibility, but we need other airlines, and I use my platform right now to embrace the whole phenomenon of basically making sure that we are not being scammed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a significant problem. I think there's a lot of technical theories about how to solve it, and I think that as AI matures a lot more, we're going to find a lot more mature solutions for these kinds of things. Alaska, we internally uh, built this AI model that looks at receipts that people submit in, and it can basically pick out which ones have been photoshopped, which ones were just downloaded off the internet, because there's a lot of fraud in that regard too. There's also a lot of fraud when it comes to baggage damage and what we pay out, for damaged suitcases and the replacement suitcases, and then mailing them that last mile. So I think there is a technical infrastructure that, to your point, Marlon, a lot of airlines are probably building independently because they're still in that investing and learning phase. But I do believe that there will be a player that comes out that looks at what claims information are coming in and looks at the BPM data, the scan point data for all these bags, and match up the timelines. Alaska, we have an additional layer on top of this, right? It definitely motivates us to get that performance tightened in. And so, yeah, on the claims piece, we just merged with another airline. We're going to see a ton more volume of it. And I think internally, the number one thing that we're learning about right now is how do we handle that from the international perspective? And once we begin flying to Europe at the end of this month. So we're still in our learning phases, but as you know, Marlon, once we're in a position to share, then we always do.
It's my role right now to get as much information out of you as good as I can. So that's my role. Leave me in that role. Yeah.
I
Hey, and
think
and
you're born for it.
the aspect of you guys building an AI system that's basically scanning the first filings. We see that in the insurance industry as well. Why isn't that shared with other airlines in the chain? I know, for example, that other airlines would like to have it. And the best part is those who are committing the fraud, they are using Southwest, they are using Air Canada, they are using Alaska, they are using Spirit. They use them all.
Yeah. Yeah, you're completely right about that. I think, we do have the foundation in the airline industry through, platforms like World Tracer where we can
Yeah.
exchange delay file information, right? I think it's just a
Mhm.
matter of navigating the privacy legislature solidly enough from a global perspective. So that way, if we do open up this kind of open data sharing platform, that it doesn't break any regulations anywhere that's consuming it. I mean, I
Yeah.
have no idea what it would take to pass something like that through Europe. I know that there's a lot of PII that gets passed around in these kind of cases. And so, when it comes to the right to be forgotten in California and, the GDPR requirements in Europe, I think there's some navigation that has to be done there, but there's nothing technically that's stopping us from doing this accurately, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I really don't think that this is, what an airline would consider a crown jewel. To your point, the more airlines that are participating in it, the more effective it becomes. So we'll see how it pans out. I think it's going to be interesting to track that conversation and help influence it towards a more global solution.
Yeah, and I know there are vendors looking into it heavily right now. So I'm confident that there will be a solution out there soon. Unfortunately, Jen is not in this call. I know Jen would be all over this because she has her philosophies about this. Hey, let's talk about data a little bit because
Yeah.
data, the connectivity, the passenger journey. Again, we need to optimize baggage performance. But how is Alaska using data right now in the baggage process? Because I would like to understand.
Oh, Marlon, we are using so much data in creative ways that we weren't just 2 years ago. So
Enlighten me.
Oh, I'm happy to. So we have two main projects that are happening that are really more data focused, and I'm going to set aside the hundreds of hours of work that our internal teams have done building dashboards and analytics and reports because that's wildly impressive. But tactically, what we've deployed physically in our operation, there's two main things. So we do have an internal system called the Baggage Intelligence Hub. That is a dashboard that is displayed on a television set next to each of our makeup units, each of our peers. And what it really does is for the ramp agents that are working those positions, if there's a bag, let's say that a bag's flight is departing in 20 minutes. And at that 20-minute mark, we don't even show a record of that bag getting scanned into a cart. There's something wrong there. Now, historically, what would happen is over a crackly radio through multiple levels of concrete at the airport, they would say, you know, yeah, exactly. Like, hey, Rick, like, can you look for this bag tag number, 0027123456? And, good luck finding that, right? In the nick of time. What this system does is on the television screen, it'll automatically, the moment that, the business rule for time to departure is hit, display the bag tag number, display the guest name, display the destination, and that's what helps them pick it out.
It sounds like predictive baggage handling, right?
It's so we'll get to that. This is more reactive. This is more like we have 20 minutes in this until this plane pushes back, and this bag is not where it needs to be. We have like a window of 10 minutes to reconcile this. So this is definitely a reactive process. Where it gets proactive, though, and by the way, that practice reduced our mishandled baggage ratio in several specific areas by quite a bit, which was great. But to get proactive, we partner with startups, notably this one called Pattern Labs. And what they built for us is an orchestration tool. So it's effectively a phone that we put in the hands of each of our ramp agents. And ultimately, we are automatically calculating when a plane lands, what bags are on board that aircraft, how many people we have to work that flight, where they physically are on the airport, where those bags need to go. And it's almost like the rideshare algorithms, Marlon, where it automatically calculates first a route that reduces the amount of mishandled baggage we have. But then second, it reduces the overall amount of miles driven that our ramp agents do. Not just saving us on time, but maintenance too.
Yeah, sure.
And so as flight statuses delay and as gates change and things like that, the route is automatically recalculated. Again, think of it like a multi-stop, Uber ride or a Lyft ride or something like that. Ultimately, what that does is, for our newer employees that are on the ramp, it allows them a lot more confidence and a lot less wayfinding time to get bags in those tight connections. For our more seasoned employees, it allows them to have greater visibility in order of all of our flight statuses, because our more seasoned employees, they have like their own preferences on how they load their carts. They might, choose to do something. And so the way that we've built this system is not prescriptive, it's suggestive, right? So like no one gets penalized for not following the route that the computer tells you to do, as long as you don't miss any bags, right? But suggestive in the sense where nearly every time that we introduced this system to a ramp agent for the first time, they looked at the route and they're like, yeah, that doesn't really make that much sense to me. And then they actually ran it and they were like, oh, now I get why it had me go in this direction. And all of a sudden we get a little bit more efficient, we get a little bit more reliable with our baggage. And then ultimately that allows us to push missions for ramp agents that, let's say the last scan for a bag that wasn't loaded and there's 20 minutes to departure was by gate C9 or something, right? Well, we know exactly who's going to be driving past C9 in the next 30 seconds. So we can tell them what bag to look for. And then in the future, right, and this is kind of going down a year or two, potentially a little more, is with computer vision, right? Like as we collect images of baggage and as we, send those images of bags to our ramp agents. So it's no longer just, hey, look for this 10-digit bag tag number and we have no idea what the bag looks like. But now even if we have an image of just one side of that suitcase, think about how much less time it would take to find the quote needle in the haystack, for that black Samsonite bag going to LAX, right?
I love it that you are selling me this idea. You're selling me the idea of imagery.
No one knows it better than you. But what's fascinating is, as we've kind of gone through this dispatch automation exercise, there's been so many on our side aha moments, right? Where it's like, oh,
yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, this is what we need.
Oh man, I started my evangelism in 2016 to convince you. It's now 2026, so finally everybody is waking. Finally, everybody is waking up. It's interesting because that's definitely. I would like to talk a little bit further later on about your vision. I want to take you to 2040 to see how that world would look like. But before we go there, one thing is something that's more behavioral based, because let's be honest, and it's not only Alaska, not only Hawaiian, but also we fucked up when it comes to the baggage product big time. And I know Alaska and Hawaiian are doing a lot to make it right, but it's still how we are perceived. And again, all the other airlines have the same problem. I can name them all, but we have a bad reputation when it comes to baggage. And we should regain new trust in checked baggage. How do you look at that?
Yes, we, as an industry as a whole, as a global industry, we've lost our passengers' confidence in handling checked bags. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. But, ultimately the conversations that we have where we talk about gaining that trust back, it's really on two parts. It's trust, but also experience and obligation. And so when I say experience and obligation, I mean, if I'm a guest traveling to wherever and I have a carry-on size suitcase, but I want to bring a bottle of wine to see my parents in Pennsylvania, right? Not only do I have to show up to the airport earlier because that's how baggage cutoff works, but I have no idea how long the lines are going to be, right? So that single, $25 bottle of wine could end up costing me like a half hour in the worst parts of the winter holidays, right? So on one hand, you have this unknown, this fear of the unknown of how much extra time is it going to take for me to do this. And then this is the second part with the trust. It's this lack of visibility and confidence in that when I turn over my personal items to you, that you're going to take care of them with, either the care or the reliability that I personally would. And so you see a lot of people now checking their bag at the gate and capitalizing on that, free bag when the bins are full, because at least they know it's not going through the sortation system and it's, right there at the plane. So how could it get missed, right? So, there's a lot of tracking, I think, that goes into this. Now, I've heard a lot of different solutions about this. And I think a lot of airlines are onto a lot of great work with in-app bag tracking. Alaska Hawaiian has had in-app bag tracking for years. But, in my opinion, it may not be quite enough. And I'm not just saying that about Alaska Hawaiian, but I think that as an industry, we need to meet passengers where they're at. So what does that mean? If I order something from Amazon, I get texts automatically every time that my delivery timeline gets updated. I don't have to ask. It is told to me proactively. When but when my Amazon package gets close to my apartment and the driver is 10 stops away, I can see on a live map where that person is. In the baggage side of things, the baggage carousel, right? Like sometimes the baggage carousels change after you land. Sometimes your bags get dropped off at a different carousel and your whole flight's waiting at carousel A, but they're really at carousel B. And, so I think tightening up visibility and communication into baggage is really what's going to make the differentiator. But then also when things go wrong, we have to own it. And when I say own it, I don't just mean like cut a gift certificate or deposit some points. What I'm talking about is making the experience of recovering your items the best it can possibly be. And I haven't heard too much work in this space being done by other airlines or other providers quite yet. But, go to any airport and you'll see a line at that baggage service office. And those are going to be the most disappointed, the most frustrated people that probably have like a taxi or something waiting outside for them or a family member, and they have no idea how long it's going to take. And you go up to this baggage service agent, and they're really at this point a transcriber function, right? Where even though you just flew on this airline, they have to ask you what your confirmation number is.
Exactly.
Even though they took your bag in the beginning, you have to describe to them what it looked like. And then, where it gets really interesting too is delivery information, right? Like, let's say that you're only on a 2-day trip. Do you give them the address of your hotel where they might ship a bag to a hotel that you may no longer be in 2 days? How do you tell them where you're going to be, the next 3 destinations that you're at? In the worst case scenario, it takes a couple weeks to recover your bag.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a huge opportunity on the lobby side at the baggage service office to improve that experience, but also improve the quality of the data that we're capturing too, to really serve those guests best. And I think, from the lobby side, from the tracking and en route side, and then, tying it all in together and really, again, owning the bad experience at the end when things inevitably go wrong. That's how we win our guest trust. And it'll take years for them to experience that, to believe in us.
Amen. Amen. Because, Gus, I think it's picture clear here what needs to happen. And it's interesting because the BagFather, as you may know, as an institute now, became a sort of a success. But every time we have an airline in one of the episodes, my mailbox or the mailbox of the production company is basically filled up with baggage stories, some horrible, but also sometimes being very, very nicely. So, what am I gonna say to the people who are reaching out after they listen to this podcast?
Ooh, man. Well, I think it'd be to maintain optimism. There's a whole load of startups that are very active in the cross airline community right now that are fielding their solutions that are, really what I'm seeing a lot less of, Marlon, which is a great thing, are startups that show up to these conferences that you can smell that they never really did market validation on their solution. It's like as a passenger, they built something that they felt was a solution and they're trying to turn into a business. I'm seeing a lot less of that in 2026.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot more involvement in these cross airline innovation communities that are hosted by a bunch of different organizations. But what we're seeing as a result are a lot more grounded solutions. And I think the conversation that airlines are even having with each other is a lot more focused. So yeah, it
Yeah,
takes time. It takes time. Like
yeah,
airline industry is not a like eh, it's never going to be the industry that moves technology the fastest because we're all human factors and people processes, and that's what takes the slowest amount of time. But the good news about that is, yeah, we can validate them quite easily.
I must say that the reactions we get and the responses we get, they give a good insight on yeah, how they experience it. But they also are forgiving the airlines because they understand how complex it is. But some airlines are just not doing a good job, and then the frustration becomes way bigger. And my in all fairness, many times an airline, whatever you do, you cannot do it right. People remain unsatisfied. But that is what it is.
Yeah.
Having said that, I would like to talk to you briefly about the challenges and the lessons that you learned over your last 7 years. So we had 7 years that are three big baggage chaos moments
Yeah.
in your career. What are the learnings, and how are we integrating new tech into legacy system and in real world operations? Because that's what it's all about. What are your learnings?
I'd say the number one learning is that it's all about relationships. I know that might sound a little corny, but the truth is, over the last 6 years, when there's baggage meltdowns, I see the same 20, 30 people volunteering that are completely outside of their role to do this. And, I think that's a testament to not just the culture of Alaska Airlines, but also the way that we build our solutions and processes, where it doesn't take someone extraordinarily specialized in baggage to be able to make a huge immediate
Yeah,
impact without any training, right? That's a huge part of it. But I think the other piece to it is we make mistakes and we have to own our failures because the way that we learn is by owning our failures. And so, like, for instance, the first time that we deployed that return to sender product, there was a lot of bags where my system couldn't print shipping labels for it, and that caused a lot of confusion, and we didn't communicate the best to our contact center, so they didn't know where to find the tracking numbers. Again, going back, relationships matter. Like, we build those relationships up, we continue working with them throughout the year, even without doing any kind of activations, just to keep them sharp and fresh and familiar with it. But ultimately, to your point about the legacy systems, Alaska has spent, the good part of 6, 7 years rebuilding all of our legacy systems from scratch. But of course, they still exist. Uh, so internally, we invested in a middleware strategy. And so we have a whole bunch of software that sits on top of Sabre, on top of all of the operational systems. So it makes it really easy for software engineers that are really not familiar with the airline business, with the operational policies, to be able to tap into operational data and build these creative solutions. I mean, that return to sender that I told you about, that was a 3-day build. That was a 3-day build. And that tapped into 4 legacy systems, FedEx, UPS, a couple, third-party couriers. Like, that was totally disconnected. And we built that over a holiday. So it's not like we were
yeah,
working with the vendor, success managers. So I think, from our perspective, the innovation use case for us, it's always surrounding the equal intersection between experience for the employee and the guest, the technology that's available, whether it's legacy or modernized, and ultimately what it means for our business. And if it gets us out of a pickle or if it improves our customer experience, it's something that we will always entertain the idea for.
yeah, and that's also in your DNA, and that's interesting because you're representing an airline, and I also know your management team who really want to make an effort in making sure that passenger journey, but also the baggage journey, is going flawless.
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
as a wrap up, because we are almost done in our time, and I'm lucky that Jen wasn't here. Otherwise, I couldn't ask so many questions. But quite honestly, your future vision, what's next for Alaska and baggage?
What's next for us as an industry, I think it does come down to what you were saying, Marlon. It's, these shared spaces where we come together and, with anonymized data, we put our cards on the table, see the patterns that we're seeing, and come together as an industry to find these solutions. We, as airlines and airport operators, we must invest more into these startups that are experimenting at the airports and are doing these proof of concepts that seem like blue sky ambitious ideas. But in 5 years, they're going to be doing it for real at full scale.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, the people that are investing in things like robotics and autonomous ground vehicles and computer vision and modernization of legacy technology, and those airlines that are being led by individuals that are willing to be boots on the ground and work the same jobs that they're building solutions for, those are the airlines that in 5 to 10 years are going to come out as industry leaders. There's no doubt about it. And everyone else is going to be catching up.
And I'm totally with you on this one. I see that as well. And if there's one thing you could change, that's the final question I have. When it comes to global baggage, what change would you make?
I mean, the two things that came to my mind is get rid of all the legacy systems and maybe just get rid of baggage entirely. But neither of those are really feasible at this point.
Yeah.
No, what I would say is, the biggest challenge that I see in our road to baggage modernization as an airline industry is the pre-existing installed base of hardware that's out there. A lot of things are going to need to be modified. There's going to be new cameras that get installed. There's going to need to be cable that gets routed. So if I could do anything, maybe it would be to simplify the hardware install that enables all this modernization later on down the line. But to be honest with you, Marlon, the challenge kind of makes my job a lot more interesting and creative. So through scrappy means, we will find a way.
Thank you very much, Gus Naughton, for all your insights, your enthusiasm, and your untempered willing to change what we are doing with baggage. I'm so much looking forward to have me in my podcast again in a time or so to talk further about the milestones that you achieved with your team, and maybe you and I can do karaoke on the song "Baggage is Sexy." Thank you for your time.
That sounds fantastic. And Marlon, as always, you are too kind, but I'm looking forward to it again sometime soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, be well, y'all.
And the BagFather is out.